Hello, and today I'm going to be taking us through the Ensign Insulation Estimating Software. So just before we get started, if you do need any of the help with anything that we go through today, please feel free to contact us on our support button here. This will give you all of our contact information as well as the ability to speak to us through the live chat function, as well as being able to submit any tickets to us as well. We also have a couple of helpful how-to articles here if you'd like to have a little read of any of those. So just before we get started with regards to creating a job, I just want to show you a little bit about the database. So if I come up to this tools section and component/material file, in here we are going to be able to see our quite large database of different materials that's needed to obviously do all of the insulation. So as you can see, we've got a very wide range here. And effectively what we have done is we've categorized all of those the same as any wholesaler would into the different banding options. So then we can apply either your specific discounts, or we could actually input your very particular net rate into any of the specific items. Then what we do with those different items is we use them to create what we refer to as a common specification. So in here is a couple of example ones, which of course you can come in here and adjust them, make them your own, rename them, whatever needs to be done. Effectively, what you do is you build out from your pipework. So as you can see, we have our base insulation here, what we're going to wrap it in, and then the identification. Then after that, on the next screen, you can actually default set the different thickness breakpoints. So what we've got here is a default of 25. So everything below 108 is going to be 25 mil thick. And then if I want anything to automatically to be defaulted higher, I could put it all the way up to the top size and say that's going to be a default of 40. So all of this is going to be 40 mil thick by default. You will of course have the ability to adjust that job by job that's needed. I just wanted to show you a little bit of how the specs and the materials all come together. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a job. So I'm just going to click the create job button here, which is going to take us to the first stage of the 6, as you can see down here at the bottom. The first bit is the job header information, so we're going to want to input all of that information. So the first thing and the only mandatory thing that's required on this page is actually the job code. So I'm just going to simply input an example one there. So we can always, like I said, we can always come back and we can adjust everything else that's on this screen except for the job code. So pushing forward from that then, what we do have is the parent code. So where the job code is a one-off specific code for this particular project, the parent code can be referred to many specific projects, whether you're referring that because it's all sort of the same thing and you're doing multiple quotations, or whether you are using it for your own internal categorization. But this is not something which you have to fill in. This is optional and this will not be shown to the client. This is for internal use only. Okay, so below that is the job name, pretty self-explanatory. I'll just input the job name there. And then the client name. Basically what you have the ability to do is to create and store any specific clients that you like onto your database. So you always have the ability to come and choose them as an option later. So all you do is simply go add new and you fill out their information. And like, of course, you can always come back and make any amendments to it if needs be. So I'm going to just pick Ensign as the client. And another thing which is for internal use only is this tender submission date function. Now, what this does is pretty simple. You come on here, you select when the job needs to be submitted by, and the purpose of this is actually on the amend job menu is the job will change colour. So green meaning you're fine, amber you're getting close, red it needs to be submitted. And you can actually go through and you can change the colours and the timings of when they all change over in the system preferences to suit however you need it to be. Okay, now that finishes off all the job header information. So what we've got below that is the labour settings. So the first thing it actually asks us is actually about travel distance. You do actually have the ability to come into here and set up a cost per mile with lodging value if applicable, if that's something in which you'd want to do. So I can simply say 45p per mile, £500 for the week, and the start point of the lodge is 75 miles. So what that's going to do is that's going to save onto my system now, and it's going to use these sort of different example breakpoints that's given to us here of what it's actually going to allow for us per day. And if we go over the 75 miles, it will allow the lodge value for the week rather than giving you a trip home and back every day. So all I simply have to do now that that's been effectively unlocked is say how far away the job is. So I simply import how many miles away it is, and the software is going to do everything else. Because effectively what it's going to do is use the installation times that's applied to each and every of those single materials we went and looked at to accumulate the total amount of hours needed divided back by whatever your hourly day is, whether that be 8, 10 or 7 or whatever it might be. We can always adjust it to suit. The daily additional cost is very, very similar in that regard to the travel distance, that it's just going to follow all of the site labour again and allow whatever you input in here. Now this could be used for toll booths, congestion charges, anything along those lines, or you could make all of those allowances in the prelim section later on stage 5, the summary table. There's always multiple abilities to actually how you input your information. It's simply more of a preference thing. And below that, what you have is your labour rate drop down. Now, I only have one labour rate set up, which is my standard labour rate, but you do have the ability to set up multiple different labour rates in here. And whether you actually just have that as multiple different choice, just for what particular project you're doing, or whether you want to, or whether you'd like the ability to put multiple different labourers on one particular quotation. I do believe we have an article about that in our support section if you would like to know any more. But if you want to add any additional rates onto here, simply just fill yourself out description on the next line below and then input the labour rate. There is things such as holiday insurance and pension rate and daily other allowances that can be included there if that is needed as well. But I'm just going to keep it on the standard labour rate just for now at the £10, and you're always best off inputting in at your cost value at this point rather than your sell, by the way. But once again, that's more of a preference thing. So what we have here is shop rates. If you do have a workshop that you'd like to make allowances for, you do have the ability to do that as well. I am going to zero this out for the purpose of today, but that can be included and doing the same thing as the site time, but for the actual workshop hours instead. And what we've got below here is the ability to say this is a supply only, so materials only, or whether it's a installation only job. If you are doing a standard supply and fit, leave these two tick boxes alone. And that's effectively it for the job header page. There is some also additional settings down here, but we don't necessarily need to go too much into that today. So what I am going to do is just press the continue button and move us on to the next stage, which is the spec page for the job. Okay, so now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to apply the different specs out of that common specification list that we looked at the start of the video, sorry. And we can do that by simply coming down here to the copy common specification. So click that and this will show you of which ones are available, and it does categorize them into pipework and ductwork for you just to keep everything all neat. So what I'm going to do is select which one I need, so just H&B and tape, press confirm, and that's then going to take us to the different thickness page. As we know how to read this and we know what figures are going to be in there as we've just inputted them. But if we do need to make any adjustments for this particular quotation, all you have to do simply come down the list and adjust it all where suitable. There we are, so that's all sorted, and what I can actually do is just adjust that one yet again. So, and then press the continue button. Then what this is going to do is ask us what service are we actually doing this for. Now the purpose of this is for the bill printouts later on, and it's going to assist us in that. So all we have to do is just assign this to everything that's needed. So I'm going to go for this one, the low temperature hot water, and then to assign the next spec, click on the next box below and repeat the process again. So this time I'm going to go for phenolic. I'm happy with the default thicknesses because I'm not going to go above 108, and then I'm going to assign it here, and now I'm just going to assign 2 more ductwork ones. So copy common spec, switch over to the ductwork, grab what you need. Now ductwork is a little bit different. It does only allow for the one particular thickness of what you need. So simply input what you need and press the continue button again. And then we'll just go through here, grab the, sorry I'm being blind, sorry, the extract system, continue, and I'm going to do it once more again. Alright, but what I'm going to do this time is just, if you can't find what it is you're after, on the list, what you do have the ability to do is add a new service in. So you can actually add this onto the list, and then it will be available to you next time. So this is our default list, so obviously you do have the ability to go on here and make any adjustments that is needed. There we are. So I've got everything in particular what I need for this job. If I did need to make any adjustments to these, just highlight it and simply press the amend button down here, and then we could go through and we can select what material it is that we need over here on the left hand side. Simply remove it and then double click the material you need, and it will input it into that spot for you. I'll just continue that all through for today. Right, and what I'm going to do now is just continue on to the next stage, which is the takeoff stage. So what we've got in here is 3 different areas. You've got your item selection over here on the left hand side, whether that would be because we're importing the items in manually or whether we will be importing them from our PDF takeoff. We have our section structure here in the middle that helps us structure the job just so we can go back and make any amendments if needed. And then we've got what we call our examine grid over here on the right, which is just going to show you the individual takeoff lines and any of its information. So the first thing that we are probably going to want to deal with is the middle bit, the sectional structure. So I'm just going to give us a little bit of a basic example of a section structure that you can create. Now obviously you can create yours in whatever way you wish, breaking it down or add to as much information as you need, whether that will be a lot or quite little, it's up to you. So everything usually works out quite fine with this, because what we do have here is a main level section with the ability to apply multiple different levels of subsections. So B being sort of A, C sort of B, and D sort of C. And you can have as many as these sections as needed. So what I'm going to simply do is just break this down into different floors and then into pipework and ductwork. So I'm just going to create my ground floor. Oh. There we are. And then I want to break this down to some subsections. So I'm going to go level B and then press plus. Now that has turned ground floor into a little folder and put this new section inside of it. So now all we have to do is rename this to what we want our section to be called. Now I'm renaming those, by the way, just by simply left clicking them 3 times, and then you are able to rename them. So I need another B level, so B's already highlighted, so just press plus this time. And then write this one in as well. Now if I do need to make this up for the next floor, all that we would have to do is go A plus and B plus and repeat the process again. Or alternatively, you can just come up to the folder, right click it, and you'll have the ability to duplicate it. So that is going to make you an identical copy of this section, which all you have to do is rename the main folder itself. Just as a little note, if that does have takeoff lines in there, because you've already inputted some items, it will also duplicate it with the takeoff lines. So do be careful of that. And there we are. So now we have our sectional breakdown. And if you don't want it constantly folding up, you can always right click it and tell it to keep globally expanded. So this will always keep it all open here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you both examples of using the left hand side to input items. So whether that be adding the items in manually from a pre-list of quantities that we already have, or inputting that directly in from the PDF takeoff. So what I'm going to start off with is just using the buttons up here. So if, for example, we need steel pipework, all you do is you come up to the steel, because what we have is steel, copper, and then the ductwork icons. Hover over any of the buttons and they'll tell you what they are if you are a little unsure. So I want the steel pipework, and this is instantly prompting me to input my different variable specs, basically. So we've got to go through and select what spec we need. And then from there, we can then put in our multiple different quantities. So now all I have to do is simply input my meterage in. And I can simply just do that by going down the list. You can also include decimals, that's not going to be a problem at all. There we are, and simply press confirm. And that's going to input those 3 items in there for you. And one thing that it does do, which is actually quite nice, is then when you go select your bends, only those relevant sizes are actually being showing up on the screen. You can press display all to view all the others, but it does give you a much more refined list that is going to make it a lot faster actually inputting the items that you need. So simply just go through and input them in like so. And once you've actually finished inputting all of the quantities for the particular spec that you're in, simply come down here to your spec option and change it over to the next one in which you need. Press confirm, and then go and then repeat the process. So I'm going to grab my items, it's asking me again, I'm just going to press confirm on that there, and then simply just input my quantities once more exactly the same. And one thing that you will notice, because one is steel and one is copper, it does actually show these differences on the screen for you. Now, what you can do if you actually have made any mistakes is you can actually come to these items and you can just adjust it live on screen. That includes the size as well as the quantity, as well as actually being able to change the spec and the service definition. You can also adjust copper and steel by simply pressing the number 1 or the number 2, and that will actually change it between the two if that is needed. Then it's going to be the same sort of thing for the ductwork. So I'm just going to come here, select my ductwork. It's going to ask me for the particular spec, press confirm. But this time, obviously, because it's rectangular ductwork, there's lots of available sizes. So we'll have to input the width and depth in ourselves. And then once again, followed up with the meterage of whatever it is that you need. I'll just do another line. There we go. Press confirm. And that then inputs the items there. And it's the same sort of story with regards to the circular ductwork as well. So as you can see, that nicely inputs all of the information onto the screen for you. Now that's all fine if you have got a list of quantities in which you're actually trying to input. But if you've already sort of done the drawing, or you've got the ability to do the PDF takeoff of it, and you want to import it that way, that's absolutely fine. There is two ways of actually getting the information across from the PDF takeoff onto the estimating software. There's one method of doing it with a saved file, so a drawing that you've already done and you've saved it. Or there's the ability of doing it once you've actually just finished and completed a drawing. So I'm going to show you how to do both methods. The first method I'm going to show you is how to reading a drawing that you've just currently finished. So here's one that I've already done, and I've finished all the takeoff for it. Now all I've actually got to do is come up here and press this export to estimating button. So I give that a press, and that's going to come up with the job's information. It knows that we're in this job because I've got the job open already. So I simply press confirm because that's correct, and that's then going to mark all these as exported. So we know it's been sent over. So all I need to do now is simply minimize this software and then come up here to the import PDF takeoff button. Give that a press, and that's now received the file. So what we've got here is the OTHW system, and we've got the different pipework and bends. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to want to assign the spec and the service. I'm going to want to press this little button here at the end. And we are looking for the low temperature hot water spec, which is this one. So all we're going to do is highlight that, select it, and then say what floor we'd like that to go into, which in my instance is the first floor. Import, and that's now moved the items across, as you can see there. So we do have the ability to read in multiple ones if there is, which I do believe there is actually on the next one, which is the other method. So if you actually come down here and press the import PDF button when you've not actually sent a file across, it automatically starts searching for them. So if you've watched our PDF takeoff video, you'll already know this, but these are the SQLs or the SDF files, if that's another way of referring to them, that get created when you do a PDF takeoff. So if you've actually already completed a drawing and you've saved it, you can always come here, press import PDF, and go to wherever that's saved, and you'll always be able to view the SDFs. So I can actually grab this ductwork layout, which I finished earlier on, simply just press open, and that's now giving us the two different specifications that I've got for the ductwork one. So I'm going to have to assign two here. So what I'm going to want to do is assign the supply to that one, and then supply the extract to this one. And I want both of these to be read into the ductwork section, so I'm going to want to highlight both colours. You can read them one by one, but obviously if you can highlight it, it just makes life all a little bit quicker. So simply just press your import button. And there we are, and that's moved it across. So that's both ways of how to actually read in information from the PDF takeoff into the estimating system. So just a few other things that I didn't particularly cover before. If you do need any muff covers or anything like that, simply give this a press, assign it to the particular specification in which it is needed, and then you'll actually be able to go through and select the different sorts of jackets that's needed. And then we can come in here and we can say what this is actually being fitted to as well, and then input the pipe size and number of That's a very sort of similar thing to with regards if you need to import any specialist items. So you can always come down here to the special button, which will allow you to put in specialist materials. As you can see, there's a couple of different options here. All you have to do is select on the category, and then you can write in your own description, hours for installation if needed, or supervision, the cost it is to you, and then the quantity. That's the same sort of thing when we look here at the subcontract items with regards to allowing for any of these. They follow the exact same thing as the material items. And you've also got labour only here as well, so you can actually come on here and you can just allow any time for strip outs or anything with regards to that if you wanted to. And you've also got the ability of coming in here to the area only functionality, where you can either do a free entry or you can actually come into our calculation formula for any of the ductwork specs to actually go through to do any of these tank calculations. You also have the ability of allowing for any particular comment lines that you would like onto the job. Simply press comment line, input what you would like, and press confirm. Whether this would be for your own reference or for your clients, that is completely up to you. And as you can see, it does highlight it in a different colour, so it's very easy to see where that information is. So just a couple of other things that you can do on this page just before we move forward is the actual, with regards to the sections. I'm not sure if you've noticed this or not, but when you actually create a new section, they come up as red, as empty, like that. And then as soon as you input a takeoff line in, they change this amber, this half-filled one here. So what you can actually do is you can right-click these sections if you finish them, come down to section status, and you can mark it green as complete. Now this won't physically actually change anything on the project at all. It's more there as a visual reference for yourself, but it is a nice helpful tool basically. Another useful feature on the right-click menu is actually the ability to turn the materials or the labour off for any particular section, and when you do so, it will actually give you a little symbol icon just so you know that that has actually been done. And to turn it back on, all you do is simply just the same thing as what we did before, and turn it back to on. And what you also have the ability to do is actually leave section notes. Once again, you can use this for your own reference or for your client's reference, as you are able to print this out as part of the end quotation that you produce. For example, if I just import that in, it gives you a little symbol so you know that some section notes have been made. Simply to view them, right click, section notes, and then you're there. Okay, so moving us forward on then to the next stage, which is stage 4, which is the calculate. Now, the first time you get to the calculate stage, the software is actually going to take that through and just calculate that automatically for you. And this time it has actually given me a warning just to let me know that we do have a blank section in the job. So that would instantly give us a prompt to actually come back here to the takeoff page, see our blank section, decide whether we've actually missed information or whether we just need to remove that simply by right click and delete, or by pressing the minus symbol down here. And just as a note of information, you cannot delete a folder. To delete a folder, you must delete all the sections that are inside of it, and once the last one has been removed, the folder will automatically disappear. So then, coming forward to continue, because we have already calculated this job once before, it's given us the prompt on screen. Basically saying, are we sure that we do actually want to recalculate this particular quotation that we've done? Because there could have been some price changes or anything along those lines, as the job could be quite a few months old. In our particular instance, yes, we're absolutely fine to recalculate the job. All we've done is gone through and removed a section. But if you are recalculating a job from a couple of weeks ago, months ago, whenever it might be, we always do recommend taking a copy of the job and recalculating the copied version. If you do, however, do this by accident, just simply give us a call and we should be able to resolve the issue for you. So I'm just going to press yes, and hopefully this is going to go through perfectly fine this time with no warnings at all. That's absolutely perfect. It does sometimes pop up with multiple different warning messages just to let you know if something has gone a little bit wrong or anything like that. Now this leads us to stage 5, the summary table. Now what this effectively is a big breakdown of the different site labour and the material costs that we've used. If we had allowed for the workshop as well, that would also be included on this screen. So what we've got over here is we've got our site labour cost breakdown. So we can see there that we have an accumulated amount of £994, an accumulated material amount of nearly 19,000. So what we can do is to actually see the breakdown of this labour is we can come down here to the bottom. So what we have is the amount of hours it's going to take, the amount of days that it's going to take based off my 8-hour working day, and what the site cost is. Now I also do have the ability of putting in a selling rate. Now you might have noticed the fact of if you times this by that, it doesn't necessarily equal this, in which you are correct, because it is also including our fuel allowance of £314.50 from our £30 mileage allowance that's also being accumulated within this site labour cost. We can always come down here and simply adjust any of our site times to make it a bit more suitable for ourselves. So you can simply come here and overtype any of these times, whether that be hours or days. If you'd like to round it up, for example, round it up to 9. So I have inflated the site labour. You can do a very similar sort of thing with the materials on the breakdown tab. You can come here and see the multiple different breakdown of the different material costings that I have used accumulating within my specifications. And we can also include inflation onto that as well. So you do have the ability of on cost. Now on cost percentage is actually what would be filled in if we went here and inputted a selling amount. As we can see there, it's actually put in the on cost percentage. We could either mark up the materials as a whole, or we could do individual breakdowns on this particular page, which would then overwrite what we've done on here. So now we'll see an accumulated percentage of our breakdown. And yes, I do want to overwrite that. But that isn't necessarily the only way of doing markup. That is the best way to do it if you do mark up your labour differently from your materials. However, if you just like to mark up using overhead and profit, for example, what you're going to want to do is follow this all the way down to the end and see these two figures get totaled up together. And then you're going to want to look at the general overhead and profit boxes here. Now to actually put in the percentages for them, just come over here to the left hand side and you'll see your overhead and profit. So simply fill this out by going through and writing in your particular percentages that you would usually work to. So there we can see 10% value of this, of the contract. Now if we add the main contract plus our 10% and then allow an additional 15%, we will end up with our profit figure here. So of course we can easily go in here and adjust this to be however we'd like it to be, but we are marking up the materials and the labour by the same percentages. So that's more of a personal decision for you guys to make. You can also just work completely to a gross profit figure, which will only ever adjust the profit box here. So the profit box is a simple percentage uplift, where gross profit is actually how much you are going to clear. And if builder's discount is actually required in your particular quotation, all you simply have to do is input that in as a fraction. So I'm going to input 1/39th, and that will actually add the 39th onto the contract for you. So when you need to quote unquote apply this or remove it, simply you can just take it out and now your contract will be back to its original value. Now that gets us all the way down to the effectively the last stage in the summary table, the prelims and prime cost and provisional sums. Now if you do need to input either of these, simply just come up here to the top and you have the tabs for them. So the prime cost tab is really simple. Prime, provisional, contingency, it doesn't effectively matter. These are placeholder descriptions. Simply overtype one, input whatever description that you would need with the amount over here, which can include an on-cost percentage if needed, and that will automatically add itself onto the gross contract cost without being affected by any of the markup in which you've done on the job. Now that's going to be the exact same sort of thing with the preliminaries. You actually have 3 ways of inputting this in: lump sum amounts through the fixed cost, time related with weekly rates and number of weeks needed, as well as the final base value, so you can allow a specific percentage, as some people like to do. But with the prelims, just as another note, it is going to spread the prelims across both your labour and materials. If you obviously want it to only go onto one, to select it, or if you'd like to show the prelim cost, simply untick it, so that can be included on the final printout. Okay, so that gives you the basic rundown of this page, other than one final thing, which is just this little button down here, which is your target value. Now this can be used to effectively just take your contract up to whatever figure it needs to be, as this will also only adjust the profit figure. But you can also use this in a different way. You can also use this to see, for budgeting purposes, to see how low of a contract that you could necessarily that you could quote at. So at negotiation periods, If your client gives you a particular figure and wants to see whether that is actually suitable for you, you can put in the requested amount here and press continue, and that will simply automatically adjust your profit percentage to get you where you need to be. So this is quite evidently the amount. Obviously we couldn't go to this because this is showing a minus figure. So perhaps our lowest amount for the quotation might be, might be something more like this in comparison to what it was originally. So you can always use that however you wish. So the last two things that's left out of the entire quotation is your internal reports that can be produced, as well as the final quotation that can be produced for the client. So your internal reports are here under the select reports button. So in here, this will allow you to view multiple different things of the job, whether you'd like a material breakdown, priced or unpriced, to send over to any wholesaler to get an actual quotation, whether you'd like to see more of a comprehensive breakdown of what we've actually done, or there's multiple different other options in here, ductwork square meterage summary, for example. So let's just take a look at these three. So I'm just going to hit the preview and export, which is then going to load them up accordingly. So here is our material list. Now I'm just going to zoom in for us a little bit on that one so we can see it a bit easier. Here we can see the item's description, as well as the quantity, the unit of measure, and what the buying quantity is for these items as well, because we can input all of that information onto the particular component. So if I shut this one down now and we have a look at the next one, which is the estimate summary, which is a nice comprehensive breakdown of all of the individual lines that we've done. So we can see all of the quantities as well as the materials each and the total. Workshop would be included in this report as well as doing the same sort of thing for the site time and getting us to the total. Now this is all at the cost value, not at your selling rate. So do be careful with these particular ones. And because I'm generating the ductwork square meterage report, it is effectively asking us, are we including the insulation thickness when calculating the square meterage? So we're doing what we need to be insulate, or what the square meterage is after it's been insulated. So I'm going to say no to that and just go for what needs to be insulated. So there we are, and it's telling me how much is needed in this particular spec and how much is needed in that particular spec, as well as our supply and fit rate at our cost values to then equal out to our totals. Now, if you do want to save any of these reports, you can always come back and preview them at any point. I mean, export them onto your own side rather than it all being on the software. What you're going to want to do is come down here, select your file format in which you prefer it to be, and simply press your export report button. That's going to automatically want to save in whatever last folder that you were in. I would recommend going into your reports folder and then being able to save it in there, but that's particularly up to you. You can also just create any additional folders for yourself as well. Typically, once you're inside of the reports folder or the drawings folder. But for the sake of it, I'm just going to save it here. And there we are, that's saved, and now that is open straight away back up for us, so we can simply copy that, and then what I'm going to want to do is shut all this down, and I'm going to go paste that particular report to my desktop. There we are, I've now got this here, and I can open this up and give this a view. There we are. Now, if you want to produce the particular quotation for your clients, so anything that is coming over using your markup, we simply press continue to the final stage of bills. Now we'll just give it a second and it's going to load it up for us. There we are. We've effectively got our different summaries over here on the left hand side, schedule of rates over here on the right hand side, and optional documentation which we can set up within the system preferences, and then a couple of settings down here at the bottom. So you've got your section summaries and tender summaries and total selling. These are all in relation to the different section structures that we created, so our particular ground floor, first floor. If you prefer to actually print out the spec summary of what we've done, you can do that as well as being able to produce a service definition summary, either merged or with the sections or just on its own. So I'm going to go through and just select a couple of different options over here on the left to show you. And then over here on the right hand side, we can I'm just going to generate the standard schedule of rates. If you don't want the schedule of rates, simply just untick the box like that. So I'm just going to hit the preview and export button, which is then just going to load it up exactly the same as those reports did a minute ago. And as we can see in here, it's showing me the service definition summary of each and the total selling cost of each that we've done. And if we actually had your company letterhead, that could be inputted up here for you. Here we can see the client's information from the client name from earlier on at the start of the job, as well as the job name as well as the job code. Shut this one down now. What we're looking at here is the tender summary. So this is giving us our sectional breakdown. We might want this more for our own reference. That's completely up to you. And here is our scheduled rates or bill of quantities, which I have opted for the section structure version of it. You can generate this without the section structure as well. I do personally think it is easier to read with it because it will give you all of the specific spec breakdowns as well as the services and then the relevant different items. So this is quite nice because it gives you a subtotal of each floor, so it's quite easy to see those breakdowns. And lastly, here we have the specification details. So this is giving us all of the breakdown of the specific specs that we've used. Now these descriptions do come from the component/material file, and you are able to access this yourself and make any adjustments if needed. And that is all of the information here. The only thing that I will actually mention is about this sort of preset documentation. We can preset this in the back end of the software, so you could effectively at this point just click on this little side button, make any adjustments to it just for this project, and then you would have the ability of including these within any of these particular breakdowns in which you wanted to generate for yourself. And you also have the ability of exporting these directly to PDF as a single merged document, and then it just follows the same export process of copying and paste this back onto your local site. Now, if you do need any help with anything that we've covered today, please just go to the contact button and get in contact with us. Thank you. Bye.